Welcome to the Proceedings Podcast. I'm Bill Hamblett, the Editor-in-Chief of Proceedings at the U.S. Naval Institute. It's Tuesday, April 21st, 2026. Good to have you on board, everybody. This episode is brought to you by Booz Allen. From rugged 5G on warships to unmanned systems deep below the ocean, Booz Allen builds technology that works where it matters most. Their AI-driven, mission-ready capabilities help the U.S. Navy operate and win in contested environments. No manual, no roadmap, no problem. Learn more at boozallen.com/defense. My guest today is the Commander, Navy Expeditionary Combat Command, Rear Admiral Brad Andros. He's a career explosive ordnance disposal officer, EOD, who graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy in 1994 with a Bachelor of Science degree in ocean engineering. He holds a master's degree in national security strategy from the National War College, and he's the author of an article in the April issue of Proceedings titled 20 Years of Navy Expeditionary Forces and the Road Ahead. Admiral, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Bill, thanks for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here, and on behalf of the 20,000 sailors and civilians that work under NECC, it's really good to get this exposure and to talk.
20,000. Wow, that's a big command. So we had you on the show 3 years ago to talk about your command's role in the recovery of the Chinese spy balloon, which was a great, news story at the time. And after it was shot down just off the coast of North Carolina, you and your team, were out there and doing the recovery. And that was a great story. So I recommend our listeners, our audience, go back and find that episode from 2023. And it's great to have you back just to talk about NECC and the development and the sort of transformation that's going on with your command. Your article starts with the establishment of Navy Expeditionary Combat Command in 2006. So it's been 20 years now. What was the impetus at that time, and what were the disparate different Navy communities that were brought together to form NECC?
In 2006, the Navy and the Joint Force was about 3 years into OEF, all the global war on terrorism. And what we found as a Navy was that the Joint Force was asking for a lot of capabilities to do, combat operations in Iraq and in Afghanistan. And what we found as a Navy was that the capabilities that the Joint Force was asking for were under a lot of different C2s. Some of the organizations were working for TICOMs. Some of the organizations were reporting directly to fleet forces or to PAC fleet. And one thing that wasn't there was a common standard for which they were force generating to go into combat. And so a decision was made to look at this and say, how can we get one person below the echelon 2 level, a TICOM-like function, to man, train, equip, force generate combat credible units that can go and support the Joint Force. So that's what the decision, that was the impetus. And when what was being demanded at the time originally was explosive ordnance disposal with the counter IED fight. Second piece was the Seabees with what they were bringing to building for the Joint Force. The third piece was port security, where seaports of debarkation needed to be protected primarily in Kuwait, but also throughout the Gulf. And then also logistics and supporting, again, and primarily in Kuwait originally, was how do we get that last tactical mile? How do we enable the operations of flowing in logistics? And then the last piece originally that came to bear was a riverine force, which neither the Navy did not have at the time. But what was going on with OIF, Tigris, Euphrates rivers, Haditha Dam, protecting that infrastructure there. It was an argument. I wouldn't say an argument. There was who's going to do this? Is it going to be the Navy? Is it going to be the Marine Corps? And it ended up being the Navy. So we're standing up an entire new capability that the Navy didn't have prior to that. With that, we've got some intelligence and some human capabilities that needed to go with riverine. So we built that. And then over time, as we fought and the Joint Force asked for a lot of individual augmentees, we took over that mission as well of training up individual augmentees and getting them into the fight. So those are the things that got brought together, and this is why they got brought together.
And I'm guessing in 2006 you were probably Lieutenant Commander Andros. Where were you at the time when that all came together?
In 2006, I had just gotten to my executive officer tour at Mobile Unit 6 in Charleston, South Carolina.
Gotcha, gotcha. All right, so I just want to pull the thread a little bit more. So you're a lieutenant commander, you're in an XO tour, you come from the EOD community, and was the merger with the other communities, was that challenging at the start from a sort of cultural perspective, or did it feel pretty natural?
I think down at that level, at the Echelon 5, I didn't really notice, to be honest with you, which is probably a testament to the leadership at the time, that it didn't impact. They didn't come in 2006, standing up at TICOM and saying, we're going to do everything differently. It's going to be a whole different model. I think that was possibly because I was in one of the formations that already fell under a TICOM. And so EOD at the time had, the TICOM was actually Surf Pac and Surf Land is who we reported to and how we did our fourth generation. So in the EOD community, we were already on an OFRP like FRTP structure where we would do the maintenance phase, basic phase, advanced phase, get certified, and then go out the door. We were measured units. I think when I look across, some of the units were entirely reserve at the time and added some active duty into it. Did not have they weren't necessarily measured units, so we didn't have a process of how to certify them. That was the same as the rest of the Navy. So I would say if I was Lieutenant Commander Andros and I was in a different part of the formation that didn't have a TICOM history behind it, there would have been some growing pains there and how we were getting to a different standard. I would say the one difference that I did see was what we were required to do and what changed with NECC and focused on CENTCOM. What we saw in this was a laser focus on what was required by the CENTCOM commander. And that moved into, probably 2 years earlier than NECC standing up, the Secretary of Defense at the time went into the global force management process. And so now the combatant commanders would send very specifically what they needed from this unit when it came forward. And so as we got into these high tempo, repeatable, short duration training cycles, 18 months in most cases, what we found was don't worry about all the things you're supposed to do. Just focus on the things that CENTCOM's asking us for. And that's part of the growth over the last 20 years as we've formed up and now what we're trying to do to pivot.
Yeah, I'm guessing that counter IED mission, that was just there was a voracious appetite from CENTCOM for those units. What were some of you mentioned some of those capabilities were in the reserve at the time. Was that like the port security forces? What were some of the things in the reserve?
Yeah, port security forces were in reserve. So we had, the Navy had inshore boat units, port security units, a little bit of coastal with undersea surveillance things and just surveillance units. Expeditionary logistics was mostly, and remains to this day, highly in the reserve force. Those were, and then you had your reserve CB battalions as well.
Got it. Got it. Can you describe some of the early mission successes of NECC?
Yeah, I think that some of the early successes of it was getting to a standard. And really taking all these different capabilities and saying, this is how we're going to force generate. Here is what's going on and what's being asked for from a capability standpoint forward. And really synergizing that mechanisms to get that trained and equipped force out the door. So a lot of efficiencies were made in outfitting with people's kit on the individual level, and also taking advantage of like systems or equipment to move forward with. So I would say one of the advantages or one of the successes in the beginning is lowering the cost and standardizing the production.
Gotcha. You've already sort of touched on this, but early challenges or hurdles that NECC had to overcome. I mean, it sounds like a lot of type commander types of things. But what were some of the maybe hardest battles that had to be fought early on?
Yeah, I think one of the original battles was aligning the C2 and making sure that the rest of the functions of the Navy really aligned into this command, and you're going to go through it. I think that there was a lot of, with any kind of change, there was a lot of people that were still trying to do it the way that it had been, and they had good reasons that they were doing that. So I think one of the struggles in the beginning was, hey, we're coming through here and really asserting us as a command into the process. I think the other piece of it was the standards and making that change. Again, generating to what was believed to be what was needed, what was best for the force or that part of the force. This is the way we've always done it. If we don't do it this way, everything's going to break. That mentality needed to be broken pretty quickly. And I will say that Admiral Bullard, when he came in, did a really good job of inserting himself into this process. And then I talked about it in the last question a little bit of the force generation process. It was just totally different from units that had been reporting directly to fleet forces. And to put it in a lexicon of today, everything was in constant sustainment. And it was really just very focused on going into permissive environments rather than going into a combat environment.
That's not the way we've always done it is a very dangerous sentence.
It is, and it's fun when you're going through change of how much that comes up.
Right, right. So in the article you write, as the war on terrorism slowly receded, so did the resourcing. At that point, the Navy had a force uniquely man-trained and equipped for a fight that was ending. The shift from counterinsurgency did not mean expeditionary forces were less relevant. It meant their relevance had migrated. Can you describe that migration? What are some of the main missions now and that you foresee in the next decade for your force?
Around 2012 to 2014, the demand on the Navy to support the Joint Force in South Asia and Southwest Asia started to diminish. With that, the way that NECC had been funded was through overseas contingency operation funding. We got a lot of money that flowed in for, which is called OCO. That was our bread and butter. That was where our main funding stream was coming from.
Wow, so you guys weren't in the base budget.
We weren't. And so now the big confrontation was moving the OCO to base. And people that are listening to this podcast probably remember that time. We had some serious decisions to make as a Navy. And so one of the things that we did was in some areas of NECC, cut the force and made it smaller in some areas. So that migration of, hey, what do we need? What do we need from this force moving forward? And I don't know if we did the best job. I think we did a good job as a Navy at that point in time of making a decision. It was really driven by the funding is drying up and what can we do? The Joint Force isn't asking for this anymore. So we can reduce our footprint, our size at that time. And then after that, it was looking at it and saying, what do we need this for going forward? And I think that for a period, we struggled with that question. But I think as DMO and EABO came into the forefront of how we're gonna fight as a Navy, that restored and said, all right, now we have a sense of purpose for this force. This force has got to be something that is present within the Navy that we force generate to on a regular basis, so that when we go into combat the next time, we have some really exquisite enablers that will make sure that the fleet can get on station and stay on station.
Yeah, so as the focus shifted for the Navy to great power competition, the Pacific, the Western Pacific, specifically First Island Chain, you mentioned DMO, Distributed Maritime Operations for the Navy, and Expeditionary Advanced Base Operations, EABO, for the Marine Corps. So your command, your units all had to sort of shift to that mission focus, maybe a little bit away from the CENTCOM focus. Back to CENTCOM for a second. Can you share any details on what NECC forces have been doing in Operation Epic Fury?
I'll let the combatant commanders talk about what we're doing and how we're being employed. And I think that Admiral Cooper is doing a great job of explaining to the American public of how he's using all of his forces in Epic Fury. But if I can, I'd just like to elevate this one up a little bit and just say, over the past 6 months, past 2 years, we've been present, and we are always present in every theater. And if you look at everything that we've done in Southcom over in the past 6 months, what we've done before that with the Red Sea, with the Houthis, and what we're doing now, we are on target quickly. And I think it really speaks volumes to the small, capable teams that we build that can move around the globe with exquisite agility. We've moved things from one theater to the next that were on a deployment because we are training to a standard that wasn't the standard before. Right? The pivot that we've made over the last 10 years has been, hey, get off of what CENTCOM's only asking for, this boutique capability, and get back to your full operational capabilities. Be ready for major combat operations. And that pivot that the force has made, and every one of the sailors and every one of the leaders has bought into, of getting back to being certified in all their mission sets, has given fleet commanders and given combatant commanders an incredible and exponential level of increase in their agility to get things around the globe. So it's fun when you're on deployment and you've got something, a team's on deployment and they've got something that they've planned for and they know what the presence is going to be, that they are really responsive when it's like, you're going to have to move to another part of the globe. Still to do your job, it's going to be in a different location, and how we can move them around so quickly.
Can I pull the thread a little bit there? I know you don't want to talk about specifically things that might be in Admiral Cooper's lane, but what are some of those specific and unique, exquisite capabilities that your force brings to whatever theater, right?
Really some really strong capabilities and logistics with NavUSG. The development of just shifting them from, if you went back to when we were beginning, I would say that they were running port operations, unloading cargo vessels, and that was it. And so over the last 20 years, and that's what CENTCOM was asking for. And then CENTCOM asked for the ability to do expeditionary refueling, right? To be able to go to a small airfield, be able to refuel aircraft, refuel platforms, and then move forward. And then we moved into how are we going to reload? And so now we've gotten to a reload capability. So that thing is that part, the Expedition Logistics Force, has moved from a bunch of stevedores that were at times in the beginning and during OIF simply doing customs inspections on things, and developed into a capability where now we're enabling the fleet to keep going, to reducing timelines that they have to travel to reload on ordnance, to reload on stores, to be able to sit there and say, all right, we're going to set up this airfield in this remote location and we need somebody to refuel it, and have a team that can go in there and run air terminal operations and refuel. So that's one area where we've just grown over the last 20 years to give a capability that's combat credible from, if you just to say it again, from just being mostly custom stuff of theater logistics to now a tactical level. I can enable combat operations, a huge change in the way that we did things. I think that the expansion of what we did with EOD and what we learned from the counter IED fight, and what we learned from robots that we got into the fight to get after the counter IED, and applying that to the maritime with the expeditionary mine countermeasures. We were probably one of the early adapters of underwater unmanned underwater vehicles, and those capabilities now being able to make any platform capable of searching for mines. Right? I don't care if it's a combat rubber braiding craft up to an aircraft carrier. to shore, to some tugboat that we just can get, makes itself available. All these things, all these platforms that we can operate and do mine countermeasures from is really an impressive transformation of that part of the force.
So expeditionary mine countermeasure, we've had some articles on that in proceedings the last couple of years. What I heard from you there is that capability, which falls under your command, is deployable to really a DDG, an LCS, an aircraft carrier. You name the platform, you can put these guys, gals, and their tools, including some unmanned underwater vehicles that can go out and search for mines, and you can put those capabilities wherever they need to be in the fleet.
Yeah, exactly, Bill. It's really platform agnostic. And it was in the article I read yesterday. It was in Wall Street Journal. They were talking about all different capabilities. This was one of them. This is something that was really an idea that came up from the deck plates of, hey, how can we get this? And they're about 10 years ago where we started doing this.
That's great. I want to ask a little bit more on the man, train, and equip side of things. What kinds of changes or adaptations have you had to make in terms of manpower, enlisted ratings, end strength? You touched on training a little bit, but and you at the start you said 20,000 sailors and civilians within your command. Is that growing? Is it pretty, is it staying about the same? You said it dipped down a little bit 2014 or so after kind of the wrap up of OEF and OIF.
Yeah, it's staying about the same. I think that there's a top line growth in the budget. We might grow a little bit bigger. We can always afford to grow a little bit bigger. From a capability standpoint and delivering a capability, I think we're right about the right size. If I was going to do any growth in this force, it would be to put some of the more foundational pieces in place, a little bit more on the training and evaluation units, a little bit more in the intermediate maintenance. That's where I would invest my people right now, because one of the transformations that we have to make is we have to be able to sustain forward. And when we were built and for CENTCOM, it was really a very mature and robust logistics and sustainment environment. And then the next, to be ready, really ready for the next conflict or any future conflicts, we really got to focus on that sustainment piece and being able that equipment is going to be able to operate for 30 to 60 days without serious resupply. So that's my main driver on that one. But what I will say is, one of the things we've done over the past 2 years is we really looked at ourselves. We started with a cross-functional team, and we asked ourselves the hard questions of, don't look in the rearview mirror. We were built for GWAT. What does DMO really mean for us to do? And how do we do this in a way so on day one of a team forming up, that they're not just planning to go for a very unique part of their capabilities and be sustained by adjacent forces, but to go in and bring the whole kitchen sink with them to be able to do it. And that cross-functional team, which we had Fleet Forces and we had Pac Fleet come in and look at how we were doing it, and they were happy with the process we were going through. Really came back with, we got people in some areas we're overinvested, in some areas we're underinvested. And taking the problem solving approach that CNO and VCNO have been championed over the past 2 years, we made the assumption that we're not getting more resources. So we went into a really concerted effort with the presidential budget for 2026 of saying, hey, I know this is some risk, but we want to rearrange our force quickly and move the people and the billets around. So we restructured how the force is manned and the demand signal to the personnel world. In some areas it got smaller, in some areas it got bigger because of where we were overinvested and underinvested. And we also aligned the budgetary functions of where the money was coming from and what people above us at OpNav thought they were funding. And so it kind of got really, it was a little messy. I compare it to like that closet that you want to clean out and really put everything back on the right shelves. And when we did this, it was two things. It was one, to show, hey, this is a more adaptable force and will produce a more reliable production. It also returned a lot of the responsibilities with the resources to do it to commanding officers. What we had done in GWAT is we had taken a lot of things out of the tactical units and centralized it. And now we're pushing all those requirements on the equipment side, the maintenance side, the supply side back to the commands. So the commanding officer has the power to make those decisions and pushing those responsibilities and authorities and resourcing back down to the echelon 5 level. And that was a big break. I think in this process, some of the things that we have made some, and we're going to continue to do over the next few years is trying to move the individual training and expertise, courses, either through education or through training, out of the OFRP. This was, again, how do you get a sailor that walks across the quarterdeck that has a certain level of standard of skills? And I think one of the success stories we had, the immediate successes, is with what we've done with the ITs and the ETs in the force, where we've got an NEC that we're going to have an expeditionary communicator. We saw a gap in what an ET and an IT in the Navy is trained to do with all their C schools and A schools, and it is rightfully so focused on producing an IT and ET that can go on a ship, go to a squadron, and operate those systems. Expeditionary comms is completely different. And so we've worked with NECC, we've worked with PERS and CMP's office to establish an NEC, get to a C school and some F schools, so that now we as a TICOM and NECC and the whole ecosystem of the Navy is delivering a sailor at the beginning of their tour that has the skills and the equipment they're going to operate. And we're looking to do that in other areas too. We went to a lot of our qualifications to get to mastery have been on the level of just PQS and sailors training sailors. And there's a little bit of a gap. I wouldn't say it's a significant one. We're trying to go from probably better to best here in that getting that into in-route training. And I think that's the next big step.
Gotcha. How about on the technology side? Are your forces incorporating robotic and autonomous systems, AI, additive manufacturing? What other new tools maybe?
Yeah, I think we're taking advantage of the acquisition reform that's going on within the Navy. A huge opportunity for us as a TICOM to move into that, to align that capability development into delivering the sailors that are going to be operating in that, something that is more full instead of just equipment coming to us, that there's a full complement. It's got all the tail behind it. And I think that's one of the things that we're doing. And I bring up the acquisition reform because we are really, really involved with PAE RAS. And so robotics and autonomous systems. And giving over to them as the acquisitions authority to say, hey, these are the things we need. This is how we can become more autonomous. We've got a lot of good ideas from the fleet, and we're pushing those up into the acquisition arm of the Secretariat to say, hey, this is where we can improve things and improve our capability. I think the biggest promise, I think, with robotic and autonomous systems, we talked about how UUVs and we're using it, but we can expand that to other areas. It's always been an EOD, the problem of getting the man out of the minefield, or the man or woman out of the minefield. And so how do you get to that, right? How do you get to that fully? We're almost there, but I think that we can go further. Same with things like salvage, and then in the construction force, the same thing. There's a lot of things where we can do with surveys, doing it from a UAS and just small things that you can just get there and implement that survey capability of that the CBs need to be able to build right. So there's a lot of areas that we're developing of moving over to robotics. From an AI front, our initial stuff right now that we're working on is really using AI to get predictive about our force generation. And using AI to understand and take all the things together for a commander that says, if you've got a maintenance schedule, if you've got a training schedule, if you've got when your people are arriving, and looking at everything that that command has to do. And if they're all done differently and they're different systems, having one machine learning, one system that's looking, and you can feed everything into it and say, these are the different schedules you have for your command right now. This is where there's conflicts, and you're going to run into a problem a year and a half from now that you're not seeing right now, and saying maybe you need to move this maintenance to the left. Don't do this, every 5-year check in the middle of your certification. If you just let it run on autopilot because this system says this is 60 months from the last time you did it, then you're going to run into a problem. So that alone is going to save us one time, one effort, and then a lot in actually funding of aligning all these things.
Yeah, cool. We're using AI on our scheduling for just editorial schedules and managing all the stuff that comes into us. Several thousand articles that come into us every year, and it as a scheduling tool, it's pretty helpful, right? It's powerful. It helps you see those things that you might not see, 3 months or 6 months in advance.
Yeah, and that's kind of that's the inch deep use of it. I think the other piece is moving into it is, hey, how do we get predictive with maintenance? How do we know when something needs to be done? Right? We've come up with a 20th century solution to maintenance. It was, hey, we got to do this. If you do this every 3 months, every month, every week, whatever it is, it's good. If we can get to a predictive model of, hey, it's probably going to break. You've done this much to it. You've used it this much. It was, making this funny noise, whatever it was, right?
Right.
It's outside the parameters for a certain amount of time. Getting that is really going to be helpful.
Yeah, that's great. That's great, sir. I'm mindful of your time. Any saved rounds before we sign off?
Yeah, I think I'd like to just wrap up, Bill, with the one thing that hasn't really changed with the Expeditionary Force, and it will never change, is the people and what we ask them to do. Really, really small teams that need to have a high level of trust. No redundancy. There's nobody on the bench. You have to be able to do your job well and be able to step into the next person's job that's your supervisor at a moment's notice. In some areas, we're about 6 people make up a platoon. And I think our largest formation is about 75 people. That's not going to operate next to the commanding officer. The story I always give is there's nobody that's coming on the 1MC when we go to general quarters. It's going to be a lieutenant and a chief petty officer or senior chief petty officer that are going to be executing the mission in a combat environment. And that takes a really special person. It takes really high standards of both knowledge of your craft and being able to lead and have people follow you in that moment of chaos. And we rely on those junior leaders to be able to do that under extreme pressure. And that's what we will continue to craft as a TICOM. And that's what we will continue to deliver to the fleet in all forms and everything that we produce.
My guest today has been Rear Admiral Brad Andros, Commander, Navy Expeditionary Combat Command. His article, 20 Years of Navy Expeditionary Forces and the Road Ahead, is in the April proceedings. I commend it to all. Admiral, thanks for your time today.
You're welcome, Bill. And on behalf of all the sailors and civilians at NECC, thanks for giving us a platform to tell our story.
All right, this episode is brought to you by Booz Allen. From rugged 5G on warships to unmanned systems deep below the ocean, Booz Allen builds technology that works where it matters most. Their AI-driven, mission-ready capabilities help the U.S. Navy operate and win in contested environments. No manual, no roadmap, no problem. Learn more at boozallen.com/defense. If you like the show, ring the bell, subscribe, tell a friend. Until next episode, remember, victory begins at the Naval Institute.